don't believe there's ultimately meaning to anything. Like the only meaning that exists is the meaning that living things give to it.
Who knows? Someday we'll discover that like those molecules carry like generational memories, and they're like, this is what our ancestors did, and this is what we'll do.
So how do you
Speaking of
explain that?
a tectonic movement, just a quick like, holy shit for Turkey. Like,
Oh yeah, man, dude. As of as of like the next day, 8,000 people at least are
gee.
dead. Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I am Eric Rosenblatt, or so I tell you. And we would love it if you like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and all that jazz. That's what cool people and our subjects do.
It's all part of our evil plan, which we're
Yeah.
going to tell you all the details of.
Oh, yes.
Turn that conveyor belt down to slow so we can do that. And then leave and give them an opportunity to escape.
Exactly.
Sorry for the digression. I'm Casey Rochford. If you want to hang out to the end of our zany wackiness, you'll hear a song at the timestamp yonder. And you're going to want to check that out. So if you don't want to listen to us jibber jabber, skip on ahead. What, that way. Well, what are we going to discuss?
Well, I think we should discuss deceiving the public. Like, we're in charge. We're the evildoers, the mustache twirling uh, controllers of the population and the planet. So why don't we hatch a scheme to trick them um, into thinking something so that we can control them, right? Like, just like the whole flat Earth thing. Like, of course, that is a devious plan to manipulate the population into doing the bidding of a select few. Of course, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think this would be an interesting one to do in a fashion kind of like we did with that survey a while back.
Mm-hmm.
Like where we read a list of points or questions and just kind of riff off of them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and those who know me generally like know that I'm kind of into conspiracy theories and the woo stuff and odd things and strange stuff. Like it's just kind of a thing that fascinates me. Um, and so I follow.
That's what they want you to be fascinated by.
That's a convenient out, by the way. Um, like so I'm very familiar with the arguments that flat earthers make about that. I do know, like, not just online but in person, I know a couple people, a small handful of people who believe that or are like leaning in that direction. I wouldn't necessarily say they're true believers, but uh they're like nega skeptics, I guess, in that regard, in that they're skeptical of the round or the spherical Earth model and stuff like that. And we have discussions occasionally, but some of the claims are just so outrageous, so out there that it's like, it's like I just it's like, who thought this up, and why are people passing all these ideas around? Because it's like, really, some of these things can be shot down with uh, grade school level understandings of how the world works.
Some of them.
Well, no, there's a few things that are, like the moon landing thing. It takes a little more technical understanding. Um,
Yeah.
but there's
Well,
stuff that's like,
let's see
oh,
what happens though. Let's
yeah,
see
yeah.
where this goes.
So we have a list here of 12 different beliefs within sort of the flat Earth circle.
That's ranker.com if you want to follow along with your picture-in-picture self.
Yeah, we might put the link in there. Although this particular site, it just kind of mostly just lists the things and then gives a brief explanation. It doesn't really go deep into it, but we will.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Well, for brevity's sake, since people can follow along, I'll just read the topic, and if we need some details, I'll read that. But I don't want to bore anyone. So
yeah. So we'll just go down the list. And so since I have a pretty intimate understanding of much of this, Casey, you're going to be the one to read the things and initially react to them. And then
I love people get to like watch on the fly as we just riff on ideas, even for the format of the show.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just like watching it and like, oh, what if we do this? This could be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Okay.
Don't take my word for it.
Dun, dun.
Let's find out.
You got to read a book, though.
Oh yeah.
Okay, number 12. This would be.
I don't see 12.
Well, we'll count. We'll make it a countdown.
Yeah. Oh, a countdown. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 12 then. Forests aren't real. We just think they are.
Yeah. That is a really weird one. So I know there's this there within this kind of, and I don't want to specify things, say that things are specifically flat Earth. It's kind of this sprawling world of people who have all kinds of wacky ideas about things, and that kind of ties in there's people out there who believe that mountains are the bases of old tree trunks that used to exist a long time ago back on Earth, and they're fossilized tree trunks.
Huh. And I mean, that's clever.
Yeah, and I could kind of see how people could get that.
It's not like impossible, I suppose, but
I mean, have you been next to a mountain though? I mean, that's big. Like that would stretch so far into space.
Yeah, I mean,
unless it was a really short tree, relatively speaking.
I mean, yes, the Earth is what, like 13.7 billion years old or something.
Yeah.
But the conditions for which any life could thrive, that isn't billions of years. So to like build up a mountain, like that's why I'm saying it's like kind of conceivable, but absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
When you get down to it, we're all the same stuff,
Sure, and certainly a long time ago, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, millions of years ago, a lot of like animal and plant life was a lot bigger, due to the conditions on Earth. So yes, there were definitely big ass trees that were way bigger than trees that we know today. And there were animals that were way bigger than animals. Well, the fucking dinosaurs, good example of that, because they ate the big ass trees and stuff like that. But not that big. That's like ludicrous. Like that is so huge.
Huh. What if, because I started to think, oh wait, chemically speaking, mountains can't be organic, but because my thought was like, oh, they're like minerals and stuff. All you're going to find are trace elements of things like oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. Oh, wait a minute,
Mm.
carbon. Oh, it doesn't have carbon. And then I was like, yeah, couldn't be. But then I thought, well, it could have carbon, right? Like pressure that turns like what is it, coal or whatever into diamond.
Yeah, well, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, like that sort of process could just be like the siphoning out phase from tree to mountain. I'm really stretching here. I'm
Well,
trying
actually,
trying to think like they do.
no, and I think we should try to be sort of balanced in this, and I always try to be balanced and give people the benefit of the doubt and see like, is it possible? Like, and I could say with this one, there could be. It's a stretch, but there definitely could be something there. Like, what if there were giant trees a long time ago, and those trees had roots that went so deep that they cracked the crust of the earth, and that's from where volcanoes and these mountains ultimately come from, or some of them. Like, so maybe there's like in folklore, millennia's old folklore, like there is some kind of connection long, long ago that
Hmm.
perhaps it could be true. Not that the mountains are like fossilized bases of trees. That's completely ludicrous, but maybe there's a seed of truth in there, as there is in most conspiracy theories. There's a little bit of something. There's nuggets of truth in there. It's just people go
For
off the rails.
for that to be true, though, I feel like it would have to be passed down through eons,
Yeah.
in secrecy, right? For
Yeah.
that to be a conspiracy. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
oh no, the tree gods are trying to hide their existence from us.
Well, to be
You
fair,
know?
this is not necessarily viewed as a conspiracy, more of just like it's a thing that people don't really like from this perspective. It's a
Yeah, that's
thing that
true.
exists that people just deny, essentially. Not
Mhm.
that there's a cabal of evildoers trying to hide the truth from us. It's just like, okay, well, most people just don't get it, essentially, is I think where this is coming from. Um, and maybe yeah, the things change storytelling. Every time you tell a story, it morphs a little tiny bit, especially when you go from generation to generation. Everybody embellishes things with their own little bits and their own experiential injections into things. And in this case, who knows, maybe a long time ago there was a big ass tree and a volcano came out of it, and that's where the origin of this stems from. I don't know. But it's an interesting.
Oh yeah, dropping hot lava all over your house.
Yeah. Well, I know like one of the things like Devil's Tower is one of the things that people talk to because it does kind of look like a tree trunk. Although I mean,
Yeah,
there's alternate explanations that make a whole hell of a lot more sense. More just kind of naturalistic explanations. But I mean, if you just glanced at it, yeah, it looks like a big ass tree trunk. So I could totally see how people without a whole bunch of knowledge about how things work could come to that conclusion. And you get enough people that don't know how things work coming to conclusions together, and well, there you go.
people see these patterns and they think there's got to be meaning to them, and it's like, well, no. Well, yeah, some natural coalition of uh, order is bound to happen, even outside of like consciousness. I think.
Oh
I
yeah,
think I think these patterns are just kind of, well, natural,
they
and
are. Yeah,
yeah,
and I don't believe there's ultimately meaning to anything. Like the only meaning that exists is the meaning that living things give to it. Humans being the most uh, prolific meaning givers.
yeah.
We do tend to do that, seeing
But
patterns
it's
where
like, mountains grow how they grow, right? And we think, oh, there's no way they could just grow vertically, but it's like these are just molecules interacting with each other. That combination
Sure.
to make something like that, and who knows, someday we'll discover that like those molecules carry like generational memories, and they're like, this
Mhm.
is what our ancestors did, and this is what we'll do. You know, we don't
And
know that.
exactly. Well, it does tie into the flat Earth thing because
Mm-hmm.
if you believe the Earth is flat, then tectonic plate movement and all the stuff that happens on a spherical planet um, doesn't apply. So where the hell do mountains come from? So how do you
Speaking of
explain that?
tectonic movement, just a quick like, holy shit for Turkey. Like,
Oh yeah, man, dude. As of okay, as of like the next day, 8,000 people at least are
gee,
dead, like lost their lives in that. And what interesting thing? So
and
people,
thousands of buildings.
oh yeah, people came from all around the world to help. And what's nuts is while there is a war raging between Russia and Ukraine, Russian and Ukrainian rescuers are currently over there standing side by side, pulling people out of the rubble and helping to fix this, which is
That
nuts. It's like,
that actually doesn't surprise me because that's the way it should be. Those
mhm.
are people, not governments.
Yeah, exactly.
Russian people, Ukrainian people going to help other people.
Other human
We're
beings.
all
We're all,
people.
yeah. And like, something like this is extra governmental. Like it has nothing to do with nationality. It has nothing to do with any feature or anything. It's like there are people, a lot of people who need help like now. I heard a story just today of a woman who gave birth uh, like while trapped, and the baby survived, the mother didn't. But they rescued the baby. So like, just oh my god, yeah, it's insane. Um, that could be its own whole
Yeah, it could.
thing.
Yeah.
But I think we should,
Well, maybe, yeah, we should move on to the next
yeah. So number
point.
11.
The Earth is a disc. I mean, wasn't that kind of like implied by flat Earth? I mean, they just think it is a pancake version,
Mm-hmm.
what it is.
Yeah, yeah, and that I think that's kind of core to the flat Earth belief. Although there are flat earthers who believe slightly differently. They believe in things that are like layers or cones or uh, it just like anything. It is not a homogenous belief system. Everybody kind of has their own sort of thing. It's very woo, but everybody's woo in their own way,
Yeah.
essentially. Um,
Well, I
but
think in our attempts to, come up with our own explanation for some of these ideas, it is a good way to see how like very different individual people can try to fill in the blanks
mhm.
and create these like conspiracy theories. Hmm.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I mean, I get it. I get why people could looking out there. I mean, look out there, look and see. Like, well, from my perspective, the Earth looks flat. Of course, there are very simple experiments you can conduct to uh, demonstrate that to not be true, or to test that. And in fact, there have been flat earthers who have tested these things using proper scientific methods and found that, oh shit, the Earth is not flat, and like like a hole, light shining through a hole over a great distance, or a pendulum, and they found that there's a 15 degree per hour drift. They thought that, like, okay, if we have these two holes with a flashlight and a camera and stuff, and then like, oh well, can you raise the flashlight up? And oh, yep, there it was. And it's like, oh, that's exactly what you'd expect with a spherical shaped
and that's going to be
thing.
a like 100% confidence rate too. Like
Yeah,
no matter how flawed your science might be, we know what answer you're going to get.
yeah, exactly.
Like that's how sure of this we are.
Oh yeah, well, and but I get why people could think this, could could come to conclusions like this, and could be suckered in by these ideas, because, well, most people don't have a scientific background. They don't have engineering experience or an understanding of geometry or anything like that. And
Yeah.
so when a charlatan comes around and tells them, like, oh, believe in this thing, and oh, they're out to get you, you better, oh yeah, you better follow me and believe this thing. Well, people fall into that trap because they don't have the tools to reason their way out of it. Especially when the only tools they have are their senses. Um, and that's a dangerous thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was coming back from Reykjavik, and the time and day of the year that I happened to leave flying hundreds of kilometers an hour, thousands of kilometers an hour, whatever. And
It'd be hundreds, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
thousands would be. I mean, if you were in a rocket or something, maybe. Yeah.
we we happened to like follow, or I shouldn't say follow, but like go against the grain of the sunset.
Mhm.
So the first 4 hours of flight were a perpetual sunset.
Huh.
And
That
then
actually sounds like the most amazing thing.
it was
That
actually really magical. And then it started to look like the sun was rising, even though we were like still going against the grain. It was almost like it just flipped. And then it got dark really fast as we got to Seattle. So I got to see a sunrise for 4 hours and then a rapid sunset over like the Cascade Mountains.
hmm,
And so I saw a sunrise in the Rockies and a sunset on the Cascades in a plane trip. Like
yeah.
the distance between those, like you can only say that like
Well,
then.
okay. So I will say the flat Earth community has answers for that. They're shaky, but they're answers nevertheless.
Huh.
Um, so let's go back to like the Earth being a disk. Um,
At least it's a round shape
well, yeah, and that at least kind of makes sense in a way.
in an
Um,
observational way, like a long
yeah,
time ago.
but then there's things you can do apart from that to essentially prove or disprove, um, like naturalistically, how stuff forms when you have stuff in a vacuum, and like, okay, what shapes emerge from things. Of course, well, we'll probably get into gravity at some point because that's denied, so that's another problem. But things tend to become spherical or spheroid and not disc shaped. Like disc shapes require very specific conditions. Um,
It requires the moon to hit your eye like a big pizza pie. That's amore.
Oh, did you just make an argument in favor of flat Earth using uh, using pizza crust?
There's this giant cosmic pizza chef, like spinning planets. Like, so some of them will be flat and they won't know what the fuck is going on.
Oh,
Yeah, no.
well, let's
My attempts are getting harder. Like,
exactly. Well, we can't really linger on any topic for too long, so let's move
yeah.
on. And I'm sorry to any flat earther that's out there. Like, hey, if you feel we didn't really cover this correctly, present some ideas, and we'll address them. I'll
Yeah.
be happy to address them
Oh, yeah.
any day. So okay,
We do
let's.
have a minute microscopy that
Yeah,
touched on
yeah,
this too.
yeah. Well, and that was only a few things, a few questions I had. So we'll go down to number 10.
Oh, what's this? Number 10.
Yeah.
Around Earth is a conspiracy to debunk religion.
Well, that depends on what religion you believe in. Um, I'm assuming it would be like the Abrahamic religions, uh, largely,
Mm.
and
But a
probably
conspiracy though is a few
what
people.
that
Like,
yeah, that's a huge issue right there.
yeah,
But why don't we go backwards, like debunking religion using around Earth? Um, it I mean, if you're going off of the Bible, and I'm no stranger to biblical texts. I went to a Christian school for most of my life, and I've read the Bible, geez, dozens of times all the way through, like front to back. Um, and from what I can gather, it has to do with kind of like descriptions in Genesis, in particular, of how things work. Um, and that, you know, it couldn't possibly be round because the way it's described there, you know, sounds like it's flat. Well, sounds like, but that doesn't mean it is. Like
right.
they're not really the things in Genesis aren't really at odds with like a spherical or spheroid planetary structure. Like it could be that.
Well,
Um,
that right there shows you that it all came from a charlatan at some point
mhm.
because it was based off of an incorrect perception of the way the world was. Yet it's claiming to have made the world in this fashion. And then you see with your own eyes that, oh, that's total hogwash. If this all perfect, all knowing God fucked up. Um,
Yeah.
I, so, I mean, like these are getting kind of harder to like rationalize to
Well,
me.
there's okay. I'll tell you what. Just like within religious communities, within flat Earth community, there's a lot of unfalsifiability. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so the only thing to do is really kind of just address it as best as we can.
right.
Because it's like, okay, well, there's really no way. Um, but I do want to get to the idea that there being a spheroid Earth is a conspiracy against religion, because you brought that up, like a conspiracy. Um, you know, how can a few people control things? And of course, something this big requires a conspiracy on like galactic proportions. And you know, it's difficult enough to keep 12 people silent, let alone like a million people or 10 million people. How is that possible? Like, and this one to me feels kind of ridiculous. Like, okay, because why? What is the end game? What is the product that they're hoping to produce? Let's say there's a conspiracy, a bunch of evildoers out there hoping to deceive everybody into thinking that the Earth is, three-dimensional spheroid and not a flat plane. Like, well, what do they gain by that? How does that change anything? It really, honestly, I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter whether the Earth is a flat plane or a spheroid. It's the Earth. It's where we live. We all admit we live here. So who cares what shape it is? Like, how does the shape matter in any way? It doesn't. I'll just throw that answer out there. It doesn't. It has no gravity. Oh, wait, that's a little flat Earth pun right there. It has no gravity at all. Like it doesn't matter. So why is that the thing? Why spend so much energy and resources and potentially killing people and silencing people to keep this a secret, that it's flat, to just convince everybody that the earth is a sphere? Because I don't know what's the benefit? What happens when the earth is a sphere or versus flat? Like,
Yeah, that's a great point.
it really doesn't matter. Like it could be either, and it's irrelevant. It's like, okay, well, fine. Um, what? Because you want to con everybody out of spending a bunch of money for NASA projects and stuff to fly spaceships up to space? Well, the governments have been doing that forever. They're still doing it. Like, and NASA's like a small potato in the mix. There are trillions of dollars spent on wars and all kinds of bullshit stuff that doesn't need to happen, yet it happens, and there's no huge conspiracy theory behind that. Well, okay, maybe there might be, but that's a whole different thing. But it's like, I just don't get it. And why?
Oh, actually, this is kind of tying into the next one. Gravity is an illusion.
Oh, so that's number 9, right?
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, so what a lot of people in the flat earth community say is like, it's not gravity, it's pressure. But the thing is, like, okay, in order to have pressure, you have to have gravity. I mean, yeah, you can worm your way around physics and say, oh, well, it's constant acceleration. This flat plane is pushing up against something, constantly accelerating. But okay, well, there's a point. Like, how long have we been here? By now, we should be traveling like 2 times the speed of light, if that's the case. So, and I mean, gravity is a testable thing.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Anything that's like anything beyond the centrifugal force that makes everything a sphere, spheroid, there's no actual like yeah, it all kind of goes against physics, which, if you break it down, because it's like, well, actually, like, we know why these things happen. There's a lot of different reasons that all these things happen. So they're kind of like an immutable force. Like, they're going to happen that way.
Well, but then the conspiracy theorists, the flat earthers, they would tell you, well, of course you'd say that.
Yeah.
You were told to say that. And physics, of course, is that whole thing. That's
you would have to have a planet builder. There is no planet builder.
Yeah. Well, and
it's not Sim Earth.
This is the thing that I think, like, when you're talking physics, gravity, things like that, it's like, okay, well, scientific processes can make predictions.
Science.
Yeah, a scientific process can make a prediction about a thing. So you could say, well, I'm going to predict that this is going to happen when this happens, or at this time, or something like that. And so far, the track record for mainstream science has been pretty damn good. Not perfect. Yes, there have been mistakes, and the flat earthers are going to be very quick to point those out and hyper focus on those. But the vast majority of things, like, yeah, our predictions essentially come true. And it's not magic. It's just an understanding of how things work. It's calculations.
But gravity specifically, like, that kind of shows that they sort of understand how gravity would work. Because, I mean, like, it can't be just pressure when it's only obvious that the moon's affecting the tide with gravity.
But the moon's not real. That's an illusion too. Oh yeah. Well, so the reason why gravity has to be um, denied in this sense is because of the flat Earth. So if you have a flat Earth, you can't have gravity the same way we do here, like assuming it's a spheroid.
Yeah.
Um, so there has to be a different explanation to kind of put things together. And yeah,
The more obvious the solution, the crazier the theory gets.
well, and yeah, oh yeah, just go ahead and take a look at like maps and stuff of how planetary movements operate within the flat Earth system. It's wacky. I mean, okay. In all fairness, I will give them this. Our 3D model is also pretty wacky. Like it's really wacky, but the difference is I can make a prediction using the model that we currently understand with pretty good accuracy. Um, I can launch a thing and get a thing to a place uh, fairly reliably. I don't think those models can do that. Um,
No.
so yeah, well, and this is the thing that when you're talking pressure versus gravity, there are very, very simple tests like any little kid could do to test that. Just a couple basic things. You don't need a bunch of money, a bunch of fancy scientific gear. You can test this yourself um, to determine whether it's pressure or gravity at play. And newsflash, it's gravity. Uh,
the only the only way like flat would make sense to me is, and it's not even really flat in this case either, but there was a book, Ring World.
oh yeah, yep.
There's this massive ring out in space that was engineered over like I don't know how many million years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the spin of it created gravity and atmosphere and all this stuff on the inside surface of the ring. And it was so massive that like to see other areas would be almost impossible because light just kind of like disappears at some point. So you all see just like space and
Yeah,
this like
and that's actually a
circular
really
action.
that's a good. So that yeah, I would say that should be your book recommendation for this episode.
Yeah.
Um, that's a
Larry
very
Niven, I
good.
think, wrote that. Is that right? Larry Niven? Niven?
That sounds right. I'm bad with names, but it
Yeah.
sounds right. I mean, and that's an interesting thought experiment
Yeah.
because actually, centrifugal force is a potential gravity generating, like, or a pseudo gravity generating system for space travel. Because us humans, we need gravity, we need that pressure, and I would say, okay, like,
Trying so hard not to break into Queen and David Bowie.
yeah, yeah. Oh, well, I had a whole different tangent, but I think I'll leave it alone, and we can go on to what is
Yeah, we
number,
should
number eight. Number eight.
NASA is a hoax. Oh, God.
Um. Oh boy. I, mm,
That's so broad. Like,
but that is the general idea within the flat Earth community: is that like NASA is just like a propaganda system.
I'll okay, maybe I'll give them this in that they could have a nugget of truth because is NASA a government thing or a private thing?
A little of both.
Yeah, that's weird, right?
Well, the
For
military
something that big. Like,
well, the military industrial complex is kind of the same thing. Like Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and stuff versus the U.S. military. They're like buddy buddy like that. And so I could see that people thinking how much money is being dumped into NASA. Um, yeah, I guess I could see that some elements of that, and I'm sure NASA's probably doesn't have a squeaky clean record for transparency, but they're they're more transparent than the Pentagon, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, like I've I've noticed them being a little bit more lenient on what they'll tell the public. And that makes me feel like, well, if they're government, they shouldn't be allowed to do this, right? You know, to be this flippant with stuff like that. But
well, it's aliens. I'm telling you, it's aliens that like they know that that's a thing. I mean,
aliens.
why do you think things have been released more and more as of late? More information when previously multiple governments have been very tight-lipped on those kinds of things or dismissive, and now they're kind of like, well, you know, hey, we got this program and here's some information. Yeah, we'll actually confirm that. We won't say I neither confirm nor deny that. Like I could see that, and certainly any governmental or mega corporational entity, yes, distrust them.
What?
Would
Wait,
not.
wait. What if that is a conspiracy to get everybody to get this data dump is put there to get all these conspiracy theorists to say, you see, they were hiding something. We were right. And like creating this even bigger divide where suddenly like we, the logical thinkers, look like the idiots.
Well, and
I mean, we're already kind of getting there, aren't we?
that's kind of the 4D chess version of that. Yes.
Yeah.
But I could see why people distrust these big systems. And NASA is, you know, a pretty expensive, huge system. However, there are so many people involved, so many, not big companies, but tiny little companies developing things. There are contractors, there's all kinds of people. Like, what I think the number I heard was the Apollo program involved like 400,000 people. If that was completely made up, you would think by now there would at least, out of 400,000 people, there'd at least be like 1,000 people who would come out, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, I get it. Compartmentalization. I know how that works. And threats and stuff like that. But that is a lot of people to keep quiet.
Yeah. No, that can't work perfectly.
No.
No.
No, if NASA was comprised of 50 people, I'd be like, okay, well, yeah, you've got something there. That might be possible. Like, yeah, you could get 50 people to remain silent by either threatening them or giving them money or hookers and blow to stay quiet. Yeah, that totally can happen, and it has happened, like over and over again. Yeah, that would be a thing. But NASA, and not only that, but okay, NASA's not an encapsulated bubble. Like NASA also works with space agencies of other countries, which also have tens or hundreds of thousands of people behind them.
Which probably has no red tape either.
Yeah, may or may not. Well, if you go to Russia, there's red tape, but there's a lot of people there too. So if all of this, like, this is the point, is like all of this is bigger than NASA. It involves millions of people, millions. Like, how is it possible that there could be such a grand conspiracy that millions of people just keep it on the down low? Like, that makes no sense. I mean, it's so out there, so extravagant, so massive that the idea that NASA is just some kind of like fabricated, made up propaganda arm of whatever government you want, I just can't accept that.
Yeah, that argument, I mean, automatically refutes that one. So there's not really much more to be said about that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't get around that. Like, you just try to get 10 people to keep a secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or one person, you tell one friend, hey, can you
Right.
keep a secret? And then like the next day they're like blah, 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 like blabbering it to their best friend, and then word gets around, and that's it. Like imagine trying to do that for millions of people. Like it's not possible, especially when the story is so crazy. Like if it was such a big deal, like, oh, the earth is actually flat, not round, and we're trying to keep it secret. Well, that's a very tantalizing tale to tell somebody. Um, so it's even more ridiculous that people would stay quiet about that. Yeah, like there's just no way that makes any sense. I could see like limited one-off sort of things, like Apollo 11, maybe like one time they kind of hushed things up a little bit because Cold War and the Russians. Um, yeah, I could see that happening once, but not for like half a century. There's absolutely
we
no way.
we
There's
probably
a
could.
lot of dead people, like
Yeah.
millions of dead people.
I'm sure we can make a whole episode out of whether or not NASA is government or private,
Mm-hmm.
the weirdness about that. But maybe we
Oh yeah,
should
we
move
could.
on. What are we on? 7?
Let's see. So I think it might be 8, right? Is it
I
8?
thought that one.
So
Look at
12,
the last one.
11, 10, 9, 8. Okay. No, you're right. It's 7.
Ah, there is 150-foot wall of ice at the edge.
Yep. So in the flat earth world, that is Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
And in the model, Antarctica actually so imagine if you like pulled the ass out of the planet and rolled it around. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
like Antarctica is a circle that encircles the disk of the planet, as it were. And there's a massive wall, according to mythos, in there.
Well, tell me this though. Do they have a plausible explanation for the North Pole? And I mean like physics plausible. Like they've pointed to an instance where we've observed that a disk that's say spinning on a top of ice, like
Mm-hmm.
a cone shape of ice, that for some reason directly in the center of that disk is going to be ice.
And I think there are people who do. I'd actually like if somebody has a good explanation for that. I'd like to hear it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it does make sense if the planet is a disk and there's some kind of thermodynamic force going on inside. Yeah, it would radiate out from the center. So why is the center also as cold as the fringes?
Yeah.
The fringes being cold, yeah, totally makes sense. I don't know why it'd be a huge tall. I mean, because yeah, the idea is it's a massive wall that is unnavigable. Which okay, sure, fine if you believe that, but go down there and take some video. Uh, pics or
Yeah.
it didn't happen.
Send your
bitch.
drone over the edge.
Yeah. Well, like the saying says, pics or it didn't happen. Like if you show me a video of that, okay, yeah, fine. I mean that's that's more compelling than just a statement of those things. Um, yeah, that one is kind of one of the more ridiculous ones.
Yeah.
Um, it's
They have to come up with something for everything though. Like
oh,
like the fact that they have all the answers is the first tip off that it's bullshit, right? Like
well,
there's plenty we still don't know about everything.
and a lot of the answers, the problem with the answers that I see is that it's kind of like Carl Sagan's magic dragon thing or whatever, like the story about like moving the goalposts essentially every time you come up with some kind of counter argument. Like, oh well, nope, it's invisible. Well, I'll throw flour on it. Well, like you just keep changing the rules every single time somebody comes up with a way to test it. And I see this happening with that. So I mean, honestly, if there really is a giant ice wall encircling the earth, go take video of it. People have boats. People can do that. Like, we actually can get on a boat as human beings, and go there. I do have to say, I have mad respect for the guy a flat earther who wanted to disprove the curvature of the earth by witnessing it himself and built his own rocket and got in it and launched. And yeah, it was a failure. Like it crashed and he died, sadly. But I mean, he at least put his money where his mouth was. Like, he was willing to go up there into the upper atmosphere to see it for himself and take video with the camera of his choice to prove his point. So respect for that. Like, I know he's wrong, but I still respect him for doing that.
Yeah. I mean,
like,
ask
that's
for
actually,
questions,
and that's that's in line with science. Like,
yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you were wrong. And it's important to show that, so you can always point to that and be like, look, they even like were totally believing this, figured out a way to cross that barrier of plausible deniability. No, that's the wrong word. Burden of proof.
Yeah.
To jump over the burden of proof fence there, and they did, right? So like, there's just no data to back it whatsoever, and we're only halfway through this list.
Yeah, so we might want to step up the pace a little bit.
Well, I'm thinking, why don't we take a piss break and we just split this into two
episodes? Yeah. Okay, sounds good. So I have to make a note, but let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, enjoy the song while we take a leak. And join us next week. Yes, that rhymed. No, it didn't have rhythm.